Almost exactly 30 years ago, in the autumn of 1977, I made 3 films for BBC One about Wales. Each programme portrayed a different Welsh community. In fact, they were part of a much bigger documentary series called The British Connection. Its purpose was to illuminate for viewers across the UK the devolution debate that was raging at that time throughout Scotland and Wales, and which led in the end to the 1979 devolution referendum. In 1977, I made a film about what was then a coal mining village called Ffynnongroyw in northeast Wales. I chose it for several reasons. One important one was that it's very close to the border with England, and yet at that time had maintained a very clear Welsh identity. But I had another even stronger reason to choose this place, because it's where I'm from. I was born there. So, to complete the jigsaw, here's the original film, followed by a present-day revisit to the characters who took part, and a chance to catch up with what happened in their lives.
The single most important factor in the growth of Ffynnongroyw was the coal mine at River Dee, or the Point of Air as it's known in English. Coal started to be mined here in the 1870s, but it wasn't until the 1880s that it really established itself. My father started working there at the age of 15 for £1 a day, and in those days it was a 6-day week with long and arduous shifts. He spent his lifetime there. For 2 miserable years I followed his footsteps underground, when I worked there as a bevin boy at the end of World War II, and hated every minute of it.
This, the well, was the only source of water in the village until the mid-30s. There is a legend that there was a shipwreck once upon a time, and the sailors were washed upon the shore and came across this well, this source of water, and that they called it ffynnongroyw, the clear crystal well.
The village itself is little more than one long street, the coast road from Chester to Holyhead. And it was probably this road which gave the place its beginning as a village, because until the land was drained to make way for it, the sea came right up to these hills behind it. But in fact, Ffynnongroyw is linked by paths and roads to a number of other small communities, like Tanlan, Talacra, and the village of Merthyr. And although each of these to the inhabitants is quite distinct, they are all linked through family ties and, perhaps more importantly, by their dependence on Point of Air.
Yn yr hen ddyddiau, baswn ni'n disgrifio pwll palw'r dydd fel pwll teuluol. Rheswm am hynny fod y bechgyn yn dilyn I tad i'r lofa. Yn y blwyddyn 1926 dechreuais I, ac mi roedd yr awyrgyl yn pwll glo ac yn ffiniau'r pwll glo yn Gymreig iawn. Mi roedd yna tua'r adeg honno, wrth gwrs, tua 100 o'r merliwns ma'n bod I lawr yn y pwll adeg honno. Ac mi roedd rhaid I bob un oedd yn gofalu neu yn calyn o rhaid farfar terma Cymraeg.
After a month's supervision down pit, we were given pit ponies. So we'll go to the stable to get a pit pony, and then We used to speak to the horse, gee up, turn round. The horse used to turn his head round, look at us as if to say, well, what you saying? And then some of the old colliers used to come to us and say, well, Bach then, you shall come I get a kettle now. And then we used to say, well, what does that mean? If you didn't speak Welsh to these pit ponies, they wouldn't move, they wouldn't move. And that's how I learned my Welsh, was working with the pit ponies on the pit.
I was born in Lancashire, and it was hard to get a job there. And I asked the under manager from the point of for a job, Mr. Evans, he was. And he said, well, how can I start you here if you can't speak Welsh? And I said, I can learn anything to get a job like. So, anyway, I got the job. I went down below, and the fellas there were very good with me. Most of them wouldn't speak English, but there was a fellow in particular, Edward Lloyd. He was the fireman, the boss. And whenever I was stuck, he'd always help me out with a few words. And I managed to get along all right. And as the time went along, well, my Welsh did come a little bit better, but it's still far from being perfect. But I do reckon myself as a Welshman now, especially after being here 60 years.
This is the Garth. It follows a stream which runs out into the sea. And it is probably older than Ffynnongroyw itself. In the old days, this was a completely Welsh neighbourhood. The mill, which was worked by a water wheel, ground grain into flour until the early 50s. And up this path are a number of cottages which could only be in Wales. But today, most of the people who live here have come from England, and the cottages now have English names. Hillside, Kirby View, Rose Cottage. It was in this particular cottage that my father was born. He was the 7th son of Edward and Margaret Lloyd, or Merthyr, as she was known locally.
My grandfather died when my father was 11 years old, and Merthyr, my grandmother, had to eke out a living by taking in washing. Merthyr was quite a character, apparently. She had to carry water from a well up this path. The bucket was carried on her head, and as she went, she knitted furiously. She sometimes took the baby with her. The baby was carried in the bucket, again on her head, and when she arrived at the well, the baby was laid on the grassy bank nearby. The bucket was filled with water, carefully placed on her head, and then she bent down to pick up the baby. But things are very different here now. There is no community, and the characters have disappeared completely.
It was all Welsh one time, but now it's mostly English, really. Although quite a lot can speak Welsh. There's quite a lot can speak Welsh here. But you do see a difference when you go into the public houses and that. It's not as Welsh as it used to be. The publicans, they learn a Welsh word or two here and there, and they manage to get along. As for these houses, these here houses in Ffynnongroyw with all the English people there, they've named them with all the English names. Why should they change the names of the places around here? Because you're in Wales, and they should stick to the Welsh names and name places, I think.
This is my 10th year at this colliery. I came from Manchester, and I was a bit apprehensive when I first came down here, and during the first 12 months I was fairly miserable, but after that I really settled down, and I got quite a lot of good friends here. And I found no friction at all. And I think this is proved by 3 years ago I was elected the branch chairman of the PET.
Miners all over the country, you know, as I say, this proves in the 2 strikes that we had, 1972, 74, they say unity is strength. There's no difference between Scottish miners, English miners, Welsh miners. The comradeship is still there. If there's an explosion in England somewhere or Scotland, say, we feel it. And I think it'd be the same if there was, if there was one here, that they'd feel the same. You feel as if you'd lost one of your brothers.
I put the cart before the horse often. We speak English. We cover this a lot, Cymric. But do we? If the language die, I think we're dead. That's my understanding. Wales is finished if the language finished.
I can't see it coming back like it was 23 years ago when I started here, when it was all Welsh. I feel saddened by it, you know, to tell you the truth. I do. I feel very sad about it, but I can't see it coming back.
Music to me is a kind of a language, or again a relaxation. I think after working at the colliery, you know, all day, tension at times, particularly before the contest. Everybody's on their toes, everyone's in top practice, you know. We just don't go to contests to make numbers up. We go there to win, and nothing less. There's no room at all whatsoever for passengers in our band. We gained first prize this year at Wrexham in the second section of the National Steddfod. To us, it's the highest honour in Wales that we could obviously achieve, to win the Royal National Steddfod.
We're beginning to make a bit of a meal of this thing now. Colin there, when you came in after the cornet 2 bars, you know, you're slowing up in a word, right? Let's open the thing out, and the cornets, we're not going onto the bar line. Can I hear the cornets there, right? 3, 4. Okay, can we run back from 9? Okay, watch that, Colin. Here we go, from 9, trombone. 3, 4.
I grew up in this village, and when I was a boy and a young man in the 30s and 40s, it was a very different place from what it is now. The chapels in those days had excellent attendances. The chapel would be full to capacity, and chairs and benches would have to be brought in. There was also a very keen cultural life in the village. All the chapels had their own literary societies, their drama groups, and their eisteddfodau, or penny readings, which are miniature eisteddfodau. And the important point here is that the people making this rich cultural life were the coal miners themselves and their families. But the language of the village in those days was predominantly Welsh. The shops, the street, the pub even, wherever you went, the language was Welsh. The village school was built in 1871, following the Education Act of 1870. My own grandfather, who was a carter, donated £0.50 from his very low wages. Ironically, my father, who later attended this school, experienced the Welsh knot, which was a device to stop Welsh being spoken in the school. So this school, which had been built to educate the community, turned out to be an enemy of the language of the people. The village children now attend the English medium school at Ffynnongroyw or Ysgol Mornant.
Well, this is an area Welsh medium school where the pupils come from villages of Ffynnongroyw, Ffynnongroyw and Gwynn. The pupils enter the school at 3.5 years of age into the nursery class, and 20% of the pupils come from homes where both parents are Welsh speaking, 30% where one parent is Welsh speaking, and 50% are from non-Welsh speaking homes. And that is the basic layout of the language pattern. As 50% come in are from non-Welsh speaking homes. Naturally, these children are not Welsh speaking when they come at 3.5 years of age. It is a hard task, but we find that after 2 years in the nursery and reception class that they are beginning to converse, and this is our main aim, is to have these children to converse. By the age of 11, the children are able to converse, read and write in both languages, which is an achievement in itself. So I think there is a future because there is a Welsh school here, and I'm proud of the Welsh school. Later on, I'm sure that these children will go through their secondary school, on to colleges or into industry, and then I hope that they will return to the area. And I think this is the most important point, that they will return to the area. They've had their education bilingually, and I would hope that their children would also be educated bilingually.
I suppose it's remarkable, really, that the language has survived for as long as it has. Not only is it near the English border to the east, some 20 miles away, but it actually looks out across the Dee to the Wirral, which is Cheshire. It was the coming of cheap transportation which opened up the village to outside influences, and given the nearness of England, these influences were overwhelmingly English. Oh, when I go back to Ffynnongroyw now, I hardly know a soul there, because most of the people are strangers who have come in from England. Well, you've only got to look around the village to see that it is a dying village. Many shops are closing. The language is declining. The Eisteddfodau and the literary societies have completely disappeared. The attendance at the various chapels is so low that it appears that the chapels will also be closing. The decline in the chapels is probably due to the lack of enthusiasm on the part of the younger generation to attend a place of worship, and also the lack of enthusiasm on the part of those people to maintain the Welsh language. But the struggle to keep the Welsh language is a very difficult problem, for many of the people of Ffynnongroyw have been negligent of their language. There are instances of Welsh couples even
who have brought up their children to be English-speaking purely because they considered it to be fashionable or the snobbish thing to do. It is to be hoped that ffynnongroyw hasn't lost its language connection forever, but it is a question, I think, of how long will it be before the language in ffynnongroyw has been lost forever.
I couldn't see Wales standing on their own 2 feet, as so-called Welsh nationalists want. See, I can't see their sort of Wales. I don't think we'd ever survive on our own.
Yn fuan wedi diwedd yr rhyfel, fe ffurwyd yr National Call Board. Ac fe wnaeth hynny fyd o wahaniaeth yn Merthyr Dee. Yn fuan iawn wedyn fe wnaed pwll newydd, tyfnach na'r pylla oedd mewn bodolaeth. Mwyn mynd at y seams, oedd o dan yr haedd yn cael ei gweithio yn bresennol. Ac wrth gwrs i'r perwyl hwnnw fe gyflogwyd arbenigwyr. Yr hyn i ddigwydd bod yn Saeson. Ac wedyn fe wedi gorffan gwneud y pwll newydd o angen gyrru lefelau newydd, neu tunnels newydd, i gyfeiriad y seams newydd. Ac o hyn i'n cael ei ollwng allan i gontractors. Hyn i wrth gwrs yn dod â'i arbenigwyr, hyn i'n Saeson, ac felly'r allwch chi gael yr rhyw ystyr sut a deall sut yr oedd yr iaith yn dod i mewn a sut yr oedd hi yn diraddio. Ac nid yn unig oedd hi'n diraddio yn y pwll, ond oedd hi'n diraddio yn y gymdogaeth i gyd. Oherwydd bod amryw o'r dynion yma yn garfod cartrefu yn y gymdogaeth. Ac oedd ddeion bod i ddylanwad nhw yn ddi ben draw ac yn achosi i raddau helaeth iawn i riwiad yr iaith ac hefyd diriwiad yn y ffordd o fyw pryd hynny hefyd fe adeiladwyd yn y pentre neuadd y Mwynwyr ac mi roi gweithrediadau honno yn hollol Saesnig. Ac wedyn, yn dilyn hynny wrth gwrs, fe gafwyd clwb o dded. Dyna os yn ni'n disgrifio oedd y pen llanw yr iaith Gymraeg.
5-2, 52, 6-0, 60, 3-7, 37, 9-0, 90, 1-6, 16, only 8, 88, on its own, number 9, 3 and 4, 34, legs, 11, on its own, number 5.
In the tumultuous decade that followed the original filming, the Point of Ayr and its miners found themselves in the throes of the often violent and bitter industrial struggles of the time, which culminated in the disastrous miners' strike of 1984-85. After their defeat, despite all their efforts, it was only a matter of time before Merthyr Dee was closed down, and in 1989 it happened. It's really hard to imagine here that there was a huge coal mine employing hundreds of men, the lifeblood of Ffynnongroyw, until just 18 years ago. And now, as you can see, absolutely nothing. Since that time, no single large employer has come to the area, and over the ensuing years, more and more local families have left to find work elsewhere. Alwyn Lloyd died in 2004, but with no suitable work available in the area, none of his 3 grown-up children have settled here. And by now, of course, the other 2 contributors have long since passed away. Looking back on it again, I'm a bit uncomfortable about the fact that I only featured men, but that was 1977 and we didn't think the same way then. So I was particularly glad to be able to make up for that to some extent this time when we interviewed Glenys Luke.
Well, this is an area Welsh medium school where the pupils come from villages of Ffynnongroyw, Merthyr and Gwynn.
You can count on 2 hands really how many really Welsh people that are still living in the village.
Because the remarkable thing about Ffynnongroyw is, for all those years, although it was only half an hour on the train from Chester, only an hour away from Manchester or Liverpool, 20 minutes away from the English border, here was a place that was very Welsh speaking and very Welsh. Do you think it's less Welsh?
Not Welsh anymore, I don't think. Can't think of it as being a Welsh village. Only there's a village in Wales